Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Dr. Jose van den Akker. She's an author who holds an advanced diploma in transpersonal art therapy, and her work involves restoring the balance of body, mind, and spirit and connecting them as a spiritual being at the center of their cross. In this episode, we'll discuss awareness of energy fields, being able to hear spirit voices, and what communication actually is. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I love the idea of being at the center of our cross, so we're definitely going to have to dig into that. But in the meantime, how did you find yourself on this path?
Pretty much since childhood. So as a child, I remember aunts and uncles visiting me and friends of my parents. The feeling that I got from them, it felt awkward. It was as if they were hiding themselves behind stuff. And so now I call that an energy field. And I felt uncomfortable because I just felt as if they weren't real. So I know that I was sensitive at that time already, but I didn't realize it, of course, as a child. As I got older, I remember sitting in church and I was as an 8-year-old or whatever, and I was thinking, gosh, my sister is going to die at one day. And so I realized life is mortal. And so that really shocked me. And at around the same time, I was reading the Old Testament. We had the Old Testament in our bookcase, and it had these amazing drawings that really spoke to me, and the pictures of angels and all sorts. And gosh, I found them fascinating. And around that time too, I thought I want to be a nun. I wanted to dedicate my life to God. And I read stuff about like ghosts, and when you leave your body, that apparently there's a silver cord, and if you lose that silver cord when you leave your body, then you're basically dead. And that terrified me as a child. And I thought, I'm never going to leave my body. But at the same time, also I used to feel like spirits around. And I remember at one point I saw in the corner as if something wanted to appear. And I thought, I really don't want that. And so I cut it off, and I thought, no, I'm not going to go there. And so I know now if you don't want that, then, they won't show up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they won't show up if you don't want it. They will respect you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When you saw your family's friends, you were able to see their energy fields. Is that what it was?
No, I felt it. I sense everything. I feel. That's my strongest touch. I can hear at times, and I can see dim outlines, but not much. It's mostly my sense of touch, some would call it, but it's my sensory, with things with my hands.
But you were able to see spirits at one point?
I wasn't able to see spirits at that time because I didn't want it as a child. I felt the energy field of people. That's what I felt. And it felt like not right. It was as if they weren't themselves. Yeah, so I could feel the stuff that I now call an energy field.
Was this from early childhood, or because you had mentioned before that you had a level of sensitivity that basically increased quite a bit? When did that happen?
The level of sensitivity.
That increased.
Just as time went on. So I was suppressing it as a child. And then as a teenager, I started smoking marijuana, and that shut me off really even more. But then I remember at one point I had a joint, and I thought I was going to the moon, and I remember the silver thread thing, the silver cord, and I thought, oh no, there's no way I want to go up. So I did everything I could to stay in my body. But then I went to the Academy for Expression and Communication, and we had an astrology weekend. And then a person who was sitting next to me, because I was feeling her energy, and I asked her, do you feel the energies here? And she said, what are you talking about? As if I was, a bit weird. And so that's when I realized, not all people have a sensory awareness, have this awareness that I have. So then I started to talk with more people at the academy who were also sensitive. And I started to realize that I was here like for the light kind of thing. I remember this conversation with this woman, and she said, I'm the dark energy and you're the light energy. And I thought, yeah, that feels right. Then other people in that same academy, they were into channeling and that. So my awareness and my curiosity that I had as a childhood already started to become more awake. That's the best word, I guess. And I noticed at that same academy also there was a lot of stuff, a lot of dark dynamics going on. And when I mentioned them, it was as if a lot of people didn't know what I was talking about. And then later I came to understand that that's like a dark force that a lot of people don't recognize unless you start to see it. That actually took the whole organization out. People started to do things that were not fitting the organization's mission and where we were going as a collective. I talked with the director, hey, why did we never talk about like these dark energies going on in the academy? And he said, well, we just didn't recognize them at that time. And I didn't recognize them myself, he said.
What exactly are energy fields and implants for that matter?
Yeah, so implants are negatively charged or positively charged fields that we carry around us. We can be, for example, in an angry energy field when we feel anger and our whole energy field radiates, like people can feel it when we're angry, not only our verbal and non-verbal expressions, but also the feeling that we emit. So that's an energy field. You can also feel it like when you walk into a room where people just had an argument and that tension is still...
It's noticeable.
Still noticeable. Yeah, that's an energy field. You have like individual energy fields. You have group energy fields, like when you go to a football stadium and then everyone goes like, yay, when someone, their party has won, and then the others go like, woo. That creates an energy field too. You can feel it, like there's this opposition kind of thing, and it overwhelms you, or if you just observe it. So they're all energy fields.
I feel that it's very important to raise awareness of the energy fields and the implants as well.
Yes, implants are ideas and energies and objects that are inserted into our psyche or our physical being without us being aware of it.
How does that actually happen?
We are being implanted over time and space as human beings, really, by all sorts of ideas. Think, for example, education or religion or role models that we've had and that implant ideas into us and that we just take on board because we don't know any better. At that point, like, oh, that's something they want me to accept it. We just accept it. And like everything that we've been taught in education, like it's their belief systems that have been implanted into us as young people. And then we started to believe, because everyone else was saying it, that it was true. And like the media is all talking about the same kind of thing. The messages that we get through the news, there's the subliminal messages underneath it. That's like an attempt to implant us. And many people, when they don't actually realize that that's happening, like in any kind of marketing, we just take something on board that's not actually ours. Because we're not aware of it, we take it on board because we are energy beings. So we are
absorbing toxic things, toxic ideas. Where do these ideas or implants actually originate from? Are they other humans? Are they non-humans? Because you did mention space before.
Some people say that they are. I know that they're not ours. Like Dave, my teacher, who I've learned to identify anything to do with energy, he's taught me around all this stuff. He just said, whenever you feel something or you think something even, just consider whether it's actually yours or someone or something else's. When he said something else's, I thought, he's got an awareness around whatever it is, that it's not necessarily someone else's idea or feeling or thought that we take on board, can also something else's. And then I started to identify, when I probed that a bit deeper, it's a field. And that's what I call that dark field. Some people talk about aliens or like ETs. They're foreign to us. But then again, we've been implanted, so it's not always easy to find out what's foreign to us.
So I've heard that more than once, where star beings that are trying to control us to some extent. I can't verify that, but it's something that does come up. So that would explain the importance of being aware of certain energy fields and noticing that's not me or that's not mine. So what is the center of our cross? Is that something to do with chakras, or what is that?
It is. When I can just refer back to my logo here. So it's all our chakras, including the ones above us and the ones below us. We interact with the cosmic spheres, with the quantum field on all these levels, vertically, but also horizontally. horizontally, I identify it more as the social, the horizontal atmosphere, like our scope of thinking. As a humanity, we think a certain way, and there's only a certain level that we can see. We cannot really see above it unless we raise our awareness to that higher level, and then we see multiple dimensions. But at this one level, and because there's different strata, we can see within this level whatever we identify as reality. That's only also always part of just reality, but acknowledging that there's this layer, all these layers, and then also this layer. And within all that, it's like a torus field. And so we exist within that. And so the center of the cross is when we feel centered within ourselves, when we feel our whole being, our higher self, we are tuned with our higher self, we're grounded. That's when we are balanced, we are aligned. So then we operate at the center of the cross. But because we're also learning as human beings, when we acknowledge the fact that we have stuff and that we have things to learn and we probe into it, we're also at the center of the cross, because then we're learning to evolve. We learn from our stuff, basically, that we've taken on board for a purpose. By unpicking that and as such untangling ourselves from us, we become more of ourselves. So it's an evolving thing.
So speaking of evolving, is raising our awareness the same thing as raising our vibration? Because you did mention something about dimensions and the cross, the vertical and the horizontal. Is that the same thing or is it different?
For me, it's the same thing. Yes.
Awareness, dimensions, going from dense matter to more light matter, being a light being.
Yes.
Right? A lot of these topics do touch on raising our vibration collectively anyway. So speaking of vibrations being collective, you believe communication is not quite what most people think it is. How is that?
Most people think of communication as like, well, you're hearing it and that's it. That's the communication. Whereas real communication is we know what the intention is behind what we express. And communication can also be nonverbal. I can say nothing to you and you'll still get a message if my intention is clear. So there's the intention behind the message, and then you as the receiver are hearing it, not only hearing it, but actually feeling it as well. And as such, acknowledging it at the same time. So communication is the intention of the sender. It's the message, the intention behind the message, the receiver, whether he or she receives it and to what degree. And then there's the time space in between. If I can just say something to you with a few words and you get the message, you feel it because you have that intention to hear it, then the distance reduces. It's like the time collapses kind of thing, like we merge. And so there's no time space in between, really. If you, for example, think, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or my intention is, well, he's not going to hear me, then I created a distance already in the communication. And then there's basically miscommunication because you don't get all that I'm trying to tell you, and I'm not fully passing on to you because I'm hiding stuff, I'm withdrawing stuff. So you don't get the full communication. There's more depth to it than just a word and someone hearing something.
The subtext has a lot to do with it, because you could be talking complete nonsense, but if your intention is very clear, someone could understand exactly what you're trying to say, as opposed to someone who's got the verbiage right but doesn't have the right intention. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, we can communicate with people on the other side of the world.
You must be reading my mind, because I was just about to ask you that. So on the other side of the world, is that related to remote viewing, or is it something different?
Remote viewing is similar, yes. What I'm thinking of in particular, say, my family lives in the Netherlands on the other side of the planet. And if my intention to communicate with them is to understand what's going on with them, I've had a few times that I went right into that. I really want to understand what was happening for one of my sisters or brothers. I just knew that they got the message because I was right there. That's the non-local mind. In the quantum field, like we are not just this body and this brain and this energy field around us. When, again, depending on the attention, we can cross space and time, and the non-local mind comes into being. So time can be bent, and so we can make contact with someone even when we don't see them or have them in our close vicinity.
It sounds like what you're describing is almost like a universal Wi-Fi where you don't really need a cell phone to call someone.
Yes.
It's an interesting topic because some of the people that have been on the podcast before that have past life memories that go way back, I'm talking about like before recorded time, seem to indicate that way back when, 15, 20,000 years ago, telepathy was normal. Also, while we're on the subject, when we talk about ascension and coming out of the Piscean to the Aquarian age and raising our vibe, there are those that have the opinion that eventually we'll be able to do that again, where it'll become normal. And that might explain now where we're seeing an explosion with mediums and psychics and the collective vibe rising. You feel the same way, or?
Yeah, I think we're coming back to where we originated from. Yeah.
I hear that a lot, and I think it's very intriguing, to say the least. So again, we're talking about communication. You've had some experience with spirit voices. How did that start, and what is that like?
So my spirit voices, I'll just start with my spiritual teacher, Dave, who was a man of higher degree, a Maori man of higher degree, tohonga, they call it in Maori. He took me to a graveyard and he just let me walk around that graveyard just to see. He was watching what I was sensing, what I was picking up on. And there was a sign at the start of the graveyard, which I hadn't seen, but it said like who these people were who are buried here. So after the whole exercise, he would be able to verify, like, look, this is what you sensed. So I was walking around. He just said, just explore and see what you find. So I walked around and I didn't feel anything much. But then there was one grave and I don't know, it just drew my attention and I thought, I'll just check in. And it felt like, as we can do when we communicate, I just moved into the grave with my mind. So with my mind's eye and felt into the space. And it was as if I just felt this man. And so he said, hi, how are you going? It was as if he was lying with his face down and was as if he sort of like rose up and said, fuck off.
You've got to be kidding.
And then so the moment he said, so it was like this, like, fuck off. And then poof. And then he threw himself straight back into the grave. It was funny. So I was shocked.
That's quite an experience. And I think I do remember you telling me that before. You've also had contact with some family members after they passed.
So just before I go there, Dave also took me to a couple of places, bush places, and he was always walking behind me because he was just checking me out and seeing what I sensed and picked up on. And then all of a sudden I felt this, and I actually kind of saw this entity. It was quite clear in the bush. He told me the name. I've forgotten the name, but it's a significant name in Maori language. All I know is that I saw him, and it was as if I rose bigger. And then I said to him, I can see you, but I cannot identify with you. I didn't say that loud. It just came from wherever it was, but it was as if I needed to match the spirits because he was challenging me. And so later on, I told Dave that that's what happened. And he looked at me and he was a bit like, whoa, okay. So I knew that there was something going on that was relevant, that was important. It was important for me because I've experienced before that I walked through a space in Germany, for example, with my friend, and we walked through a dark space, like in the Schwarzwald, there were the Nazis. They killed a lot of people, and a lot of black magic was done in the past there. So there's a lot of spaces that have a really horrible feeling to them. So I walked with my friend through this area, and then there was this space, just a dip in the ground and a field. And then I said to my friend, just stop. We cannot go through here. Wait a minute. And it was as if I threw this big light bubble around us. And then I said, okay, now let's just walk through. And so it was as if I carried this big light bubble involving her as well. So we walked through this dark space. And then when I felt that through it and we'd gone to the other end, then I said, oh, it's okay now. And I dropped that bubble. It was like a light bubble that I threw around us.
It sounds almost like a protection spell, something like that. Well, maybe not a spell, but in other words, it was a protective device, almost like a prophylactic for dark energy.
Yes.
Do you get a sense that there was a lot of spirits in these areas where there's a bad feeling? These spirits are just not very happy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we can communicate with them, and we can actually, like there was again with Dave, he said, just see what you sense here. And I said, I sense a lot of kids here, if I could see it. The same here, like in Australia, there's a lot of places where Aboriginal people were killed. And it's like I can see where they were killed, or spirits that are loose and sort of have taken up a space. Somewhere there in New Zealand, I saw these kids and I heard them as well. And I felt really sad. And so I told Dave, gosh, I don't know what's happened here, but it feels terrible. And so I went right into it, whatever I was feeling. And then that whole feeling dissipated. And he said, you've just cleared this tapu, as they call it. So that's how we can heal a space, by actually moving into it, not being afraid of it, but listening. It's that communication thing again. So communicating with the space and finding whatever we find and acknowledging it for what it is. And as such, it is being heard and it can go.
So you're saying you can heal the space. It sounds like it's a method of clearing the space somehow to enable those earthbound spirits to move on and go towards the light. It's not a good feeling for any of us to know that there are unhappy spirits, but that type of phenomena does happen quite a bit. There are mediums that do help earthbound spirits transition and find the light, because sometimes those that may have died violently or suddenly can seem lost. Right. Do you ever get a sense of that, or is that not really in your wheelhouse?
I've had that. And what I've said to people who wanted me to clear those spirits, just feel them, acknowledge them for them being here, and just feel what's going on for them. Just see if you can communicate with them with the best intention.
To help them go to the light, obviously. Yeah. That's probably the highest intention you can have.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of experience with this spirit realm, and I believe you've had some relatives that you're still able to have contact with?
Well, when my mum died, that was so clear. And then when 1.5 years later, my dad died. So my mum, she loved flowers, right? She just loved flowers. And so when she died, on her coffin in front of the church, on her coffin, there were lots of flowers all around and on the coffin and everything. And so I was sitting there in the pew. There was all this singing going on and stuff. And then all of a sudden, it was as if I saw my mum. It was like she was dancing, hovering about these flowers. And then she said to me, hey, Jose, do you see all those flowers? You know, with utter delight. And I said, yes, I do see them, Mum. I do see those flowers. They're for you. She said, what? Really? And so off she went again, hovering. And then not long after, it was as if she went right up. It was as if I could, with my mind's eye, I looked up, and it was as if there was this big space opening up, and there she went. And I've never seen her since. That clearly she went right up, really high up, and off she went, and that was it.
You actually saw what she looked like?
I saw her presence, yes. Ever so dimly, but yes, I did.
I don't know how old your mom was when she passed, but did she look about the same age as when she passed, or? No, she was 94 and she was very ill. She had Alzheimer's. But when she was dancing with these flowers, she was like this young, vibrant spirit, like really, like loving life and loving the flowers, yeah. The reason I bring that up is because many people do report that when they see their friends and family members, like you did, often they seem to be in their prime.
Yes.
Any other people that you've had that kind of contact with?
My father died 1.5 years later, and I was sitting next to his grave, and I was just sort of thinking about nothing. And my sister was on the graveyard as well. She was further away checking out different graves. And so I was just sitting, said, oh, Jose, I'm so happy here. There are all these friends here, and I'm just so happy. And I said, oh, really, Dad? That's wonderful. And that was it. And so that's all I needed to hear. Clearly, that's what he needed to tell me. So off I went to my sister and I said, hey, my dad he just spoke to me and he's really happy. He's got all these friends around him. And so my sister, she looked at me as if saying, like, are you nuts? Like, and then she actually said, I think it's just self-talk. And I said to her, no, it's not self-talk. I know the difference between self-talk and when spirit talks. And, she hasn't had the experience. And I didn't know how to explain at that time, but now I know the difference, yeah.
How do we know that it's authentic contact?
Well, maybe one example, like what happened when my mum died, and mum talked to me and said, "Hey, do you see all those flowers, Jose?" And when I told her, "Yes, and they're for you," and off she went again. And I thought, hang on, doesn't she know that she's dead? And I remember thinking to myself, so all this is self-talk, right? And do I have the right to tell her that she's dead? And so that was the self-talk, whereas my mum just appearing quite clearly in front of me and saying, "Hey," and when I hear spirits, it's not in my energy field. It just comes out from space, so to speak, and all of a sudden it's there and I hear these words.
That's where the awareness comes in, right?
That's when spirit talks, yeah. Whereas when I'm self-chatting, it's like inside my own head and my own energy field. I have more and more frequently now that a word just comes to me, like words come to me that I don't know. For example, the other day I heard, like, "You're presenting as an orifice." I thought, what's this? Who's saying that? And I don't know even what an orifice is. So I had to go online and had a look at what that actually means. And that happens frequently, like when I do automatic writing, as I said. I get words that are just not part of my vocabulary. But then the wording is beautiful. I start to write and then whatever comes to me and I just accept it. So I write it down and then until it runs out. And then I finish with "thank you." And then I read back on it and I think, wow, there's a whole complete essay on a particular topic or whatever the message is that they want to pass on. They start off with this and then they end with that. And in between it all fits together. That is automatic writing, yeah.
It is. Okay. So you actually have had instances where you start writing and you finish something and you look at it, but maybe you don't remember actually writing that down. Has that ever happened?
Well, I just know I do it very frequently. I did it for 1.5 years every morning and nowadays twice a week or something. And I just open myself, make contact and I say, "Thank you, everyone," like higher team, God, higher self, whatever. And so I attune to them and then I just start to write and I trust that whatever words come to me is not my ego talking. It's not in my brain. It's just whatever comes to me is given to me and I write that down. And then it becomes this piece.
So can we assume that in that instance that you are a scribe for spirit?
Yes, it feels like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Anything else that we need to know about raising our awareness? Pretty important stuff.
I think it's important for people just to know that we are not alone, that we are energy beings, always in exchange with our environment, and the environment is always in exchange with us. And obviously we have free will. We can stop our receptors, so to speak, block our receptors out of self-preservation or whatever it is. But yeah, we can open ourselves to the influences outside. But the thing is, we need to be able to discern whether it's actually our intention. Our intention is important. So like if you notice something that doesn't feel right, we have two options, either shying away from it and shutting down. We have probably several options, but the other one that I prefer to have is, what's actually going on here? Or what am I actually sensing? And moving into it rather than shying away from that. And by doing that, I noticed that I'm actually becoming more self-aware, but also lightening up the space around me. So I assume responsibility.
Responsibility. I like that. Very interesting stuff, Dr. Jose. Thanks for joining us tonight. Very informative things about raising our awareness. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
My website is universalheart.com.au. So universal-heart.com.au. So people can go there. If they want to have a chat with me, they can book a discovery call. And Instagram, Universal Heart.
We will put that in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. In the meantime, you can find more info on closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.